What is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host as always. And joining me tonight is my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing? How was your first day of spring break?
It was great. I immediately turned around and applied and sent in applications, and so already added some new stress to new things. But I'm all good. Everything is good though. When thank you, Gavino, for this mug. It's the 2-point conversion play to Mike Williams in Arrowhead against the Chiefs.
Ooh.
So thank you for sending me that one, Gavino.
I want that in a shirt. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I would like to see that happen. But it's all good. So my spring break was last week, so hopefully your break is better than mine was. But I don't want to get into that right now. So we're gonna have a fun conversation today about the 2023 safety class. We see Solo Man in the chat here. His guy Trey Dean going to be featured today potentially. We'll see what happens there. So going to be a fun conversation about the ranking of this group. I do want to start off the conversation just kind of assessing the safety position for the Chargers as well. Maybe getting an insight into what the Chargers might be looking for in this draft class. There's obviously the John Johnson stuff that we've talked about, kind of hanging over that position right now as well. So we'll start with that one. But before we begin, obviously want to make sure everybody watching, make sure you subscribe, like, comment on all these videos. We appreciate all of that, and it really helps us continue to grow the channel. So appreciate you on that side of things. If you are listening, make sure to leave us a rating, review, share the podcast with your friends. Football is always better with friends, so spread the word. We appreciate that. All right, Tyler, let's talk about this safety position. Like I mentioned, obviously the John Johnson stuff kind of up in the air right now. There was the initial report, like on the first day of free agency, from Jeremy Fowler that the Chargers were going to be interested in John Johnson and a Brandon Staley reunion. That, of course, has not happened yet. Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco spoke at least semi-glowingly about Alohi Gilman as a potential starter alongside Derwin James. Brandon Staley said that they're really excited about JT Woods, kind of throwing that in there at the final minute there in that kind of conversation. So in terms of who the Chargers have on the roster alongside Derwin James, what are you kind of buying in terms of potential roles here with those two? Maybe, we talked about Raheem Lane a little bit during the season. In your mind, what are you buying for the existing safety room?
I'll be honest, I do not know, because I don't know if the Chargers know. They've tried to get rid of, first they try to establish Nasir Adderley, and at some point they try to get rid of Alohi Gilman. So they draft Mark Webb, slightly different role. Then they draft JT Woods, kind of similar role, trying to get rid of him. Lo and behold, Adderley's gone. He's retired. They benched him in the middle of the season. Gilman's your starter. Woods can't get on the field. And undrafted free agent Raheem Lane is your quote-unquote starter on special teams. So I really don't know. I'm surprised at this point that John Johnson hasn't been signed. I don't know if this is and maybe we'll talk about it with the guys that we are going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Maybe they think that like there's a good spot where they feel comfortable looking for a safety to pair opposite Derwin James. And so maybe that's how they'll explore it. I know that with Morgan Fox, for example, they offered him a contract that was the contract that you saw, which was kind of terrible.
Yeah.
But they said, hey, there's the offer, and we will circle around back after the draft. If you'd like to continue talking, you can go look somewhere else, but here's the offer. You want to take it now before the draft? Cool. After the draft, we can talk about it, but we also might go draft someone. So I have a feeling that maybe that's the case with John Johnson, as we've sort of seen with Kyle Van Noy, Morgan Fox last year, Bryce Callahan. Maybe there's just sort of like a, hey, here's what we can give you. If you find something else, great. If not, we'll circle around at the end of the draft. And I think that that's kind of what's going to happen at this point. Again, though, I am surprised because I've never seen a player like Sebastian Joseph Day openly go, hey, please join us, please join us, please join us. And then the team doesn't do anything. Not that he has any control, but I almost feel like at that point, if you're saying that on social media, that maybe like it's going to happen. But it hasn't. So I'm very surprised. I truly believe that JT Woods is someone that they're going to like playing in 2024 and 2025. I really do believe either Alohi's the starter, or it's John Johnson, or it's a draft pick. I think JT Woods is going to sit on the back burner, especially because they don't trust him to play special teams. And I don't think he's going to get any meaningful playing time unless somebody gets hurt.
Man, that would be a little frustrating. Obviously, not going to lie. With the way that this defense needs to function, they need versatile safeties. They need safeties who can tackle. And there was that quote that was deleted from I forget who shared it, but it was somebody who attended the coaching clinic that Brandon Staley attended at the University of Oregon. And that person had asked Brandon Staley, like, what's the biggest difference between like the Rams defense and the Chargers defense? And the quote was, paraphrasing that, well, my corners in LA can't charter, my corners with the Chargers cannot tackle, excuse me. And that's
Wait, he said that?
Yeah, you didn't see that earlier today?
No,
Oh
how
my
did I not
gosh.
see that?
Yeah, it was shared somebody shared in the Discord, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't know if this is true or not. That's a wild statement for him to say if it is. And I think to a certain extent, I kind of agree with it in terms of defending the run. I think the Chargers have had significant problems in the slot in particular. I would argue that free safety has been a problem of theirs as well. So they need secondary help. Like this is an underrated, thing for the Chargers right now. Obviously, we've talked about the cornerback position, but they need safety help as well, man. Like I don't feel good about this safety room as is. And even if you draft a safety, like I don't feel great about, one of these rookies being safety 3 while JT Woods is a healthy scratch. Like that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the safety room and solving these issues. So the fact that John Johnson is not signed yet, I think, like you're saying, is an indication that maybe they have some kind of fallback deal in terms of the draft. Maybe he's asking for too much money, but the safety market is not being kind to these players. And so the fact that John Johnson is not signed yet, to me, is definitely a head scratcher.
I mean, we've seen guys ask for too much money or hold out or whatever. Maybe he thinks he's something. I mean, he have a sizable contract in Cleveland. So if he's looking for even half of that, I think that's quite a bit, to be completely honest. I need to find that quote, because if Brandon Staley said that, well, one, this isn't exactly the safety class to look for sure tacklers, which means two, if he actually did say that, one, I am worried about Asante Samuel Jr.'s future with the team, because they've already expressed and shown that they do not trust his tackling. And two, I mean, Brian Branch has got to be the pick at 21 if that's the case, to be completely honest, because if he does nothing else, he tackles and tackles very well. But I find that quote. Someone's got to find that for me, because that
I'm looking at it right now. So the account that tweeted it out was all 22. I'm pretty sure it's a coach. They definitely attended the coaching clinic. They tweeted a picture of them at the coaching clinic. He tweeted out earlier this morning a couple Staley quotes from the clinic, and then all of the tweets were deleted. So I don't know if he was frustrated by the amount of Chargers fans who were like quote tweeting it, including myself. But the quote that this person tweeted about corners says, "What was the difference between coaching one of the best defenses of all time with the Rams to struggling on defense with the Chargers? Our corners couldn't tackle. If your corners can't tackle, you aren't going to win a lot of football games."
Oh, God. Okay.
But like I said, the tweet was deleted. All of the guy tweeted like 4 or 5 different quotes from Staley, supposedly. And then all of the tweets were deleted after a bunch of us started quote tweeting it. So I don't know, man. It seems a little sketchy to me, but at the same time, like, he's talked about corners being able to tackle several times. We know that they took Asante off of the field in favor of Jaw Taylor on rundown. So like, I don't think it's that far out there, but at the same time, like, the person deleted all of the tweets. So I don't know what to buy here.
No, it could be an awful, completely untrue rumor that I totally would buy. That's the thing. there is like a truth to it.
Yeah,
I'll have to look more into that, obviously. I literally just found that out just now. But if that's the case, I mean, kind of like you've been discussing as well and pushing, especially if that's true, then next corner episode we talk about is going to be very important as well when talking about some of these round 1-ish corners, because I think like 6 or 7 of them have a first or second round grade from Dane Brugler. Like, this is a class, apparently. And I have not watched these guys except for Branch, and even that's a tweener thing. But, okay, interesting. I'm not going to take it as fact, but something to consider. And he's not wrong. With that said, going back to last year, someone asked me if the run defense was fixed, and I said maybe because the interior defensive line guys, but no, because the secondary guys, all of them had histories of not being great tacklers, both in terms of run stops and missed tackle rate. So, like, I don't know what Brandon Staley expected. Maybe he'd hoped that, like, as a cohesive unit, they'd work together. But it was like Derwin James is the good tackler, and then everyone else was like 20th percentile or worse. So I guess I don't know really what he expected, but interesting.
I will say Asante Samuel Jr., his missed tackle rate definitely improved from his rookie season to this season. But then again, like, you're taking him off of the field in rushing situations. Bryce Callahan, like, he was never a great tackler. Like, he's a great slot cover man, but he was never a great tackler. And then Nasir Adderley's step back this year was a huge problem. If the Chargers had the 2022 defensive line room with 2021 Nasir Adderley, the run defense is not nearly as much of a problem. So I don't know, man. Like, this in terms of the safeties, kind of circling this back here, they need more physicality and they need more sure-handed tacklers. And there's a good amount of them in this group that I like. I think when it comes to adding to this room, theoretically, if you have some development from JT Woods, like, what you need is somebody who can play the slot on occasion and play in the box and be a physical presence in the box to kind of take some pressure off of Derwin in that regard and be able to, use Derwin in a variety of ways, like we know that they want to. So that's part of the reason why I wanted John Johnson, because John Johnson can do all of that, and maybe they ultimately do sign him. So definitely something to keep in mind in terms of, like, what I want to see them add. Like, I think some people talking about, like, oh, they need another ball hawk. It's like, yes, but also you drafted JT Woods to be that guy. So for me, I would like to see them get more size, more physicality in that room, and allow, Derwin to be a little bit more free in that regard.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of my favorite safeties in this class are more of like your sideline to sideline range, deep safety types. But there are some guys in here that definitely fit, I think, what the Chargers would want. Not as like a Mark Webb replacement, because there really wasn't anything to replace, but either like some sort of upgrade or just another shot at getting a player like that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so Tyler, let's jump in here to the rankings. Very interested to see how this one goes. To start off really quickly, I have Brian Branch listed as a corner. I believe you have him listed as a safety. So that's definitely something that is going to be different on our list. I don't know if you watched the Boise State safety, J.L. Skinner, I think his name is. I did not watch him because he's not playing as a rookie. He tore his ACL or whatever, training for the draft. So it's very unfortunate. I did not feel like grading him because of that. So we'll see if he ultimately gets drafted. I don't know if you graded him or not, but did want to talk about that as well. So eventually at some point I'll watch him. Maybe if the Chargers draft him, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But those two players, I think, are going to be potential differences between the two of us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just found out that JL Skinner tore his ACL. So I guess I got to move him a little bit.
Sorry. So you liked him, though?
I liked him enough to put him in the top 9. Yeah. So it's worth the watch, but I didn't realize that. When did he tear his ACL?
Oh, that was torn pec. Excuse me, not ACL. I want to say that was leading up to the combine.
Oh man,
can't remember. I knew he got injured, so I was like, I'm not gonna watch this guy. He's not playing as a rookie. I'm good.
Oh, in February. So he's not even okay. Well, all right, hold up. You talk about your 9th guy. I'll make some changes here.
Okay. I'm gonna add the sheet up right now.
Okay. Gosh dang it.
Sorry, Tyler. He was all excited. All right, so this is potentially going to be a bit of a hot take to start off. So my just missed number 9 for me is Sidney Brown from Illinois. I know there's a lot of fans of his out there. And I think there's a lot to like about him, at least in terms of the flashes, right? Like, dude's an athletic freak, and he really plays like, he plays with his hair on fire, and I think he flies around. He tries to, hit everybody he possibly can, but he's a tad reckless for my liking, and there's a lot of lowering the head, lowering the shoulder, not wrapping up. There's a ton of missed tackles on his resume. So Sidney Brown, I think, from an athletic standpoint, there's a lot to like. From a mentality standpoint, there's a couple instances where he blitzes and just like destroys the running back, and it's a lot of fun. And then, he's missing tackles in space left and right. So there are some concerns here. Daniel Jeremiah tweeted about this safety class being kind of down, and people are like, yeah, this is why you should draft Sidney Brown super early. And it's like, I don't know if you want to do that with 70 missed tackles on his resume. So I think if you're taking him on like day 3, I'm cool with it. But he's getting like late second round hype, and I can't buy that because of just the missed tackles that are a big issue on film, on the numbers. And he's also 5'9". Like there's a size concern for me too here. So when it comes to the Brown twins, I'm definitely a bigger fan of his brother that plays running back than I am of Sidney, who plays safety.
I did not know that. Yeah, Sidney Brown, amazingly, because of where he was ranked, I didn't expect this to be the case, but he's outside of my just missed, although maybe he'll be at my 9th spot because of JL Skinner's pectoral injury.
Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, Sidney Brown, there's a play, I can't remember what team it was. Like you said, there are moments where he's excellent. There's a play, it was a fantastic setting of the edge or whatever, stack shed against the tight end. And you're thinking, wow, like this is a really great run defender. What is it going to look like? I see him, trying to attack the line of scrimmage. So what does this look like, at the end of my film watch? And to me, there's a lot of credit for trying, but that's not
sure
good for the NFL. And to me, it's like the way I described it is he enters the ring but doesn't throw any punches. And I feel like so often he gets to the point, but then I don't see him like, not that I need him to injure himself, but like sticking his nose, and trying to get in there and make the tackle. There are some guys that just want it more in this class, and for that matter as well, like he's not the best tackler as is. So again, 70 missed tackles in 5 years. Brian Branch, like I said, 4 in 3 years. Very, 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 very different. Tackling for safeties for me is honestly probably the biggest thing that moves a player up or down for me. Sometimes it's about effort. Some guys don't have a great missed tackle rate, but I can tell like they are in it. They're trying. They do make big plays. Sometimes it's hit or miss. There's a safety, higher up my board who's like kind of the same thing where it's sometimes boom or bust, but at least like you can work through some things. With Brown, I was just so frustrated. And then having 70 missed tackles and a consistent like 16, 15, 17, whatever it is, percent missed tackle rate, and being 5'9", I just don't love that projection heading into the NFL. But he is, and I'm sure this is why he's going to go earlier than maybe we have him ranked. Nobody in this class is really athletic at safety. There's not like a true,
there's not a ton. Yeah.
Last year I felt like there were so many different guys who had a high athletic ceiling, even if maybe they weren't the best player. These guys, there really isn't a whole lot to go off of. So, if you draft Sidney Brown over to say Jamie Robinson or something, another kind of short player, then I would sort of get it because you at least are going on the upside, going with the athleticism. But to me, like, between the two athletes at Illinois, there's one that's clearly better than the other one. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, Benjamin Knutson is saying in the chat here right now that JL Skinner was saying at his pro day that he would be available in 6 weeks from that time. So if that were true, he would be ready for training camp. That feels like a remarkably fast recovery from a torn pec, in my opinion. So I guess maybe I have to go watch some JL Skinner now.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm literally learning this all on the fly. So I'm just going to.
You can keep him. I think you should keep him, honestly.
I am. But I'm going to put him at the just missed for now, even though I do like him a lot more than that. But to me, like, there is a cluster of guys with 3rd round grades for me where, like, if you have torn pec, you're going to fall back to just missed. But I still do really like him. And I depending on the injury, I will still keep him ahead of Sidney Brown, who would be my 10th guy on this list. JL Skinner, I think, was 5th on this list for me because of the way he played. One of my favorites in the class, to be completely honest. I'm really shedding a tear talking about this right now.
Oh, man, that sucks.
5th or 6th. I think more favorite in terms of, like, I just really liked watching him.
Yeah.
Again, not a top 3 player for me, but he did play a lot closer to the line of scrimmage at Boise State. I would actually rather see him play back. I'm a bit more. He is, I think, honestly, one of the only guys in this class that's like a tall safety, if you will. I believe he's like an 1/8 of an inch down from 6'4", with 32-inch arms. So you want this like taller. He didn't test, obviously, but if you want this taller, I think rangy, athletic type at safety, that's going to be your guy. He's really the only guy that's really has that same height profile. Not that always makes a great safety. JT Woods is tall and skinny, and it's not worked out so far. But I do think he's one of the smartest guys in coverage. If you watch him against BYU, he does pick off the quarterback. And again, you could watch that game.
Let's go.
If nothing else, watch that game. It's 44 minutes, so enjoy. But
God.
but there are several moments where if the BYU quarterback were any bit competent, he would have had 3 or 4 interceptions in that game, because you can tell he's reading and getting to a spot, but then the quarterback was either hit or he'd throw a terrible ball or over the player's head or whatever. But Skinner was in position several times to make a play. I think he's a really, really good free safety kind of player that I would have definitely put 5th or 6th on my list until about 4 minutes ago. So I endorse him as a player, but I don't know much about him in terms of his injury right now.
There we go. I'll have to go back and watch him then, because if this injury is not severe enough that will prohibit him from missing any games this year, then I think it's worth a watch. I thought that the injury was much more severe than that, and we were talking about like he's missing first half of his rookie season kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and watch him, and then hopefully we can get some clarity on the injury there outside of the designation. So all right, next up for me, again, this is a solid group. I don't think this safety class is anything crazy. I don't think it's necessarily bad like the linebacker group. At number 8 for me, I'm going to have Brandon Joseph from Notre Dame. Again, not a great athlete, but I'll talk about his strengths here in a little bit. At number 7, I have Jair Brown. I think it's this way. Is that how you spell it?
You have to get away from it so I can see the update. No, oh God, hold on.
Is it Jayir?
J-I apostrophe capital A-Y-I-R. I'll do it. I can just do it if you want to talk.
Okay.
Type.
Sorry.
You're good.
And then number 6, I have Chris Smith from Georgia. So
Nice.
These are all players who I think can be useful. I don't think that any of them are going to be like elite players by any means. I think all 3 of these guys are probably best suited in a scheme that is going to be like a 2-high shell scheme like the Chargers run. I like all of their skill sets in terms of playing the box, playing the slot. Jair Brown is somebody that I was high on last year when I thought that he was going to declare. And I think there are some athletic limitations here.
Yes.
And Penn State really miscast him. I thought they played him far too often as a center fielder playing deep. I think his best work is when he's around the line of scrimmage, playing the box, being used as a blitzer, covering tight ends. I really like his physicality against tight ends was something that I really enjoyed watching. So again, all 3 of these guys are kind of limited athletically, but there's just solid tacklers in space. They have some really nice attributes in that regard. Jair Brown is probably the one that I enjoyed watching the most in the box, but like I said, I think Penn State kind of put him on an island a little bit too much in terms of playing the deep parts of the field. For what it's worth, he did have 6 interceptions in 2021, so I really like the ball skills when he's able to get there. Just in terms of range, I think there are some athletic limitations there, but really good ball production, good ball skills, good tackling ability, and then like I said, I think he can give you some nice physicality in the box. So Jair Brown is somebody that I would really like to see, the Chargers potentially take a chance on day 3, if that's the kind of pathway that they want to go down.
Yeah, I would love that. As far as Brandon Joseph, and I'll talk about Brown later because I do have him on the list and a bit higher. Joseph is totally solid. I think that it was clear to me right away. First, I had to watch him with Notre Dame. Then I had to go back and watch him at Northwestern. Like, this is a guy who has ideal. I don't know if the physical testing is there, but some of these guys, I feel like the testing isn't there, but the range is there. I don't know if it's an instincts thing or a quickness or a trigger thing, but he has that range as a run defender. And if you want to see his range, there's a great sack against Michigan in 2021 where he just flies out of a cannon from the free safety spot, hits the quarterback for a sack. Just definitely shows off the range, the straight line speed, at least that way. Mentally locked in. I think he's a really solid run game contributor. To me, it's just like he would be higher for me, and he's going to be 8th on my list. Injuries last year, that's definitely a knock. And then just kind of a lack of production. I was surprised because I feel like watching him, there was more, but I believe he had as many run stops like his entire career as Brian Branch had last year. No, that's Brian Branch. but there is like
Yeah.
a noticeable difference in production. So injuries, lack of production. I'm not really sure why he ended up switching to Notre Dame. I'd have to look more into that. But Brandon Joseph does have a 3rd round grade for me. So I do really like him, and everyone after this is going to have a 3rd round grade or better for me. So, I mean, as far as safeties go, he's pretty good.
Yeah, I like him a lot in terms of just his tape. The athleticism, again, it's not great. He did have an 84th percentile 10-yard split when he ran the 40-yard dash at the combine. So I do think in instances where you can kind of condense his space a little bit, again, working him as a box safety, he shows enough of an ability to trigger quickly and then make those plays, in a vacuum. It's just, are you going to be able to ask him to, cover deep parts of the field? Are you going to be able to have him match up one-on-one with receivers? I think probably not. But if you kind of limit him as a box safety, match up with tight ends from occasion, obviously not the elite ones, play that kind of 6th safety role, I think he can definitely carve out a nice career for himself.
Yeah, I would agree. Alrighty, for me at number 7. Sorry, things changed a little bit, so give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. Number 7. No, it's good. I'm glad we talked about this. A player that's way back on the draft board for most, DeMarco Hallams from Alabama. I did not watch Battle, I believe it is, the other safety from Alabama. Yeah. So, oops, I didn't get around to watching that guy. Should have probably picked guys that didn't tear their pecs. And then at number 6, I have Jamie Robinson from Florida State, who I do like more than that ranking, but I can only put him up so far. I believe both his pectorals are working just fine, but he is a bit shorter. Anyway, okay, that's it. I'm done talking about that part. Right. DeMarco Hallams, I believe. I'll get the bad out of the way first. That game against Tennessee was brutal. He's a limited athlete, and it shows. Trying to cover Jalen Hyatt was not fun. The out and up that Hyatt scored one-on-one on the outside, that was against Hellams, and there's like one, I think there's a first touchdown that he scored where he split the 2 defenders in zone. That was on him. Maybe that's kind of a whole defense issue more than Hellams, but he's definitely a limited athlete. But I do think he has overall good, again, sort of this range versus testing numbers thing, because his testing numbers aren't good, kind of like a lot of guys on this list, but I do think that the range is there. But even watching that Tennessee game, I did come away a bit more impressed. And if missed tackle rate is, and really just playing the run is something that gets you knocked down a board for me, anybody who's willing to stick their nose in a play and go ahead and just continually across the field make plays, that will move you up. And for me, this is probably a special teams guy on day 3 who could potentially be your Mark Webb replacement. But I just do admire so much of what he was able to do, because he played all over the field for Alabama. In my opinion, I don't think there were many safeties in this class who had more of a varied role. I don't know if that's just an Alabama thing. Again, I didn't watch the other guy, but he just had so many different roles other than maybe blitzing. But you see him, in zone, in man coverage, playing deep, in the box, covering the flat, whatever. Like, he found a way to make plays. I believe of the 11 safeties that I graded, he had the most tackles with 84, 25 of them run stops. 84 tackles versus Sidney Brown, who had like 50 something. Not that tackles mean everything, but it's certainly some of the most entertaining film you're going to watch, because he's always consistently around the football. The missed tackle rate is okay, but it's still better than most. I believe he's 3rd in missed tackle rate of this safety group and 3rd in run stop rate. I just love how often he's around the football. I love how smart he is. He's even top 3 in forced incompletion rate. I didn't get a chance to see that. Sometimes you just kind of have to trust the numbers there. But I didn't get a chance to see significant ball skills like someone like who is it? Who did we just talk about that had 10 interceptions or 6 or Jair Brown? He had 4 last year, 6 the year before. Definitely don't have as many as that, but I do feel like this is your Mark Webb day 3 sort of replacement type. There is no tie to Derek Ansley. There was no like former Alabama something ties there. He's 210th on the consensus board, and frankly, I love what he does more than most of the 14 safeties that are ahead of him on the consensus board. It's not the sexiest pick. He's not the most athletic player, but just getting the job done is just getting the job done. And I think he does that very, very well and does a lot of roles for Alabama that I do like. So he is on my list by just a bit.
Yeah. This Alabama secondary is pretty interesting to watch, because, typically you have, these great corners, you have like a freak safety, and, Brian Branch is a great player. He's not an outside. He wasn't an outside corner for them, but This Alabama secondary was not that great to watch on tape this in terms of like their production and things like that. But I did not watch DeMarco Helms, but we're big into composite rankings and how these players kind of stack up from a statistical standpoint. And Helms is in the top 3 in terms of his composite ranking on our compilation, if you will. So numbers like him a lot. I didn't grade him that highly. Him and Trey Dean are kind of are outside of Sidney Brown for me. So Soloman's Trey Dean guy maybe doesn't make the list. I guess I'll see where you're at with him.
He does not.
Okay. But Trey Dean and DeMarco Helms, I think, have some similar things here. So you hinted at Jordan Battle. So I'll get to him next here because I did grade him. He is number 5 for me. And then number 4 for me, make sure I get this right, is Ronnie Hickman from Ohio State.
Wow. Okay.
Is that much higher than yours?
Well, he is last place on my list currently.
All right, there we go. So I guess I'll talk about Ronnie Hickman. I think there are, again, similar theme. There are definitely some athletic limitations here, but something that really stood out to me when just kind of looking at his physical profile, he has 33-inch arms, which I believe is the longest in this class. And I really enjoyed watching the way that he was able to make plays on the football. I think he has fantastic ball skills. I think he had 4 interceptions this past year and 11 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken, or 11 pass breakups. So Ronnie Hickman makes a lot of plays on the football. I think his ability to play in the middle of the field as a zone defender is really fantastic. His ability to match routes was a lot of fun to watch. I think his missed tackle rate is a little too high for my liking, but it's kind of an interesting, debate here when it comes to like ball production versus tackling ability. So Ronnie Hickman's instincts and coverage, I think, really stood out to me in this class. Especially when you compare him to other players who kind of maybe struggle in the deep parts of the field, maybe struggle in cover 2, maybe struggle in cover 1 robber situations. So that really was why I put him so highly here. Jordan Battle is an interesting player. I think there are definitely some flashes of elite athletic traits. He ran a 4.55 and was an elite percentile in 10 and 20-yard splits, but he was pretty below average with the jumping categories as well as the agility drills, which is pretty strange. You don't really see that often. Somebody who's very high end speed but low end in terms of the other explosiveness categories. So the thing for me with Jordan Battle is just he's a tick slow with his trigger at certain times. When he is able to really trust it and go, I think he makes some great plays on the football. I think he makes some great tackles, but I question whether his instincts are really high level or not. And, that could be something why the Alabama secondary kind of struggled a little bit. But, in this group where there's not a ton of athletic traits, somebody who can run 4.55, I think definitely stands out to me. So, Jordan Battle, I think, is a quality player, but I think he's a bit more high risk than some of these other players that we're talking about here.
Okay. So who was I thinking of for this? There was someone in here that reminded me a lot of Nick Cross. Oh, I know who it is. We'll talk about him later. But so this is kind of like a not boomer bust player with Jordan Battle, but like you want to make sure you do the things that he's good at and hope he's good at what he's good at and coach those things up sort of guy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about him in particular was actually his work in man coverage. There were some great reps against which tight end was it? I can't remember right now. Anyways, so I think his ability to match up in the slot is one of the better attributes in this group as well. And so I do think that he would be a good fit for the Chargers because he does have that speed, that physicality, his ability to match up in the slot. So I don't know if I want to take him where he's projected to go. Kind of seems like he's going late second, early third, which I don't necessarily agree with either. But I think in a vacuum, like his traits do line up with what I think the Chargers could be needing in this class.
Okay. I'll definitely have to give him a watch then. Was he a 3-4 year starter or player?
He was a 2-year starter at Alabama.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to give it a look. Okay. I do not have Ronnie Hickman on my list. I do not have Jordan Battle due to not grading. So at number 5, who do I have? Oh, yeah. Number 5, I have Chris Smith. It's not very far from where you have him. At number 4, I have Jair Brown. And at number 3, I have Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M.
Oh, I forgot to do 3. Okay. Sorry. You go ahead.
Oh, wait. What do we usually do?
That's okay. You go ahead with 3.
What do we usually do?
I think we saved the last 2. So this is my mistake for sure.
Oh, okay.
So you go ahead. You finish on those other guys.
Is Johnson your third? Because I can just copy that over. Oh, Jamie, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jair Brown was a player I accidentally graded last year, and I believe so. Same. I was like, hey, and I mean it this time, not like Osiris Torrance where he wasn't there last year. I mean it. Jair Brown, I checked. I definitely graded him. So I'm happy to talk about him this year.
Yeah.
I liked watching him anyway play Michigan, but that play that I posted today, where he's lined up at edge and he gets into a 3-point stance and then takes on the pulling guard and drops the running back for a tackle for a loss. That's one of my favorite plays I've seen a safety make this entire pre-draft process. One of my favorite plays I've seen anybody make. That was surprising. They tried to rush him off the edge a little bit later. Didn't work out sometimes the big offensive tackles were better than the safety trying to blitz. But to see him do that against a guard at the goal line was very impressive. And then against Utah, he lines up against the right tackle, jabs outside, cuts back inside, and sacks the quarterback. I believe he knocked Rising out of the game.
He did, yes.
So, yay.
So I did not watch that game, so that game did not impact my ranking of him, just to put that out there.
That positively impacted mine because he had 2 sacks and like 3 pressures and an interception.
Yeah.
So he knocked the quarterback out of the game. The backup quarterback comes in, and then he picks off that quarterback like 2 plays later. And I was like, yeah, this is good football, but I understand why you wouldn't watch it. Very productive at the line this past season, 15 pressures, 5 sacks, 27 run stops, despite playing less than 300 non-coverage snaps this past year. I do think he has good coverage, good production in coverage. I don't love him as much as that would indicate. He had those 10 interceptions, but I didn't love the sideline to sideline as much. Like you said, I do see him more as a closer to the line of scrimmage box safety type, but it is nice to have at least some sprinkle of different things that maybe he could do. But I do like him a lot. He's going to be, of this class, he is going to be my guy of the safety class for me. I just think he's able to affect the game of football in 3 different ways. Maybe better, closer to the line of scrimmage, blitzing, or defending the run. But I do think he's a well-rounded player that I do think maybe someone like Chris Smith, I do like as a deep safety, and I think he's very smart and instinctive. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how much of the game he's going to be able to affect, even though I do think Chris Smith is a better coverage safety. Different roles, right? I see Chris Smith more as that deep safety. But Brown, I just love the way he affects the game of football. And again, just highlighted by a tackle for loss against a pulling guard against Michigan at the goal line.
Yeah, so I will not be watching that second Rose Bowl again. I was there in person. No. It was not fun, man. Once Cam Rising got knocked out, it turned into a blowout in a hurry. So, it was not great. So, I like Jair Brown a lot. Again, I didn't watch that game, so it didn't impact anyway. And it wouldn't, right? Like I've watched Jackson Smith and Jigba go off for 300 yards on tape against Utah in that Rose Bowl. So that's fun. And he's my wide receiver 1. So
yeah,
I like Jair Brown a lot. And I think there's a ton to like. Again, I think his missed tackle rate is more indicative of him being miscast because it is pretty high. But Jair Brown, I think, is a fantastic player. I think from a day 3 perspective, if he's there, I think the Chargers would be wise to snag him if, depending on the board, of course. So I like him a lot. So your number 3 is going to be my number 2. I like Antonio Johnson a lot. And then my number 1 safety is Jartavius Martin from Illinois as well. So again, Sidney Brown getting a lot of hype from Illinois. I think Jartavius Martin is a far better prospect than his teammate is. So Jartavius Martin is about 2.5 inches taller. He's definitely lighter on the lighter side, 194 pounds, but one of the most versatile players in this class. Actually reminded me quite a bit of Dax Hill, who came out last year from Michigan, with just the way that he's able to play. I think Martin is a better athlete than Dax Hill was, but if you watch him if you could just get like, I'm sure PFF, elite prescriptions could get this right, like just cut ups of like his blitz, his pass rush reps. There's a lot of quality reps in there. If you could get just his reps in terms of him working the box and tackling in space, there's a lot of good reps there. He's got great ball skills, good ball production. So Jartavius Martin for me checks so many boxes in this class. He's, I believe, the second best athlete overall in terms of the free safeties. If you look on the RAS website, and then there's great production, there's great tackling ability. I just think that he's one of the more underrated players in this class when you're talking about as a whole.
Yeah.
So because of, I think he's a little on the lighter side. That's really like my only concern about him. So I have him as a very high second round grade. We do the 0 to 8 scale right now. And 7 is the cutoff for first round grade. I have him a 6.95. So I'm a big fan of Jartavius Martin. I think that he is going consistently in like the third round in mock drafts, and I just don't understand that at all. So to me, like he's far and away the safety one in this class for me. Again, I have Brian Branch as a corner. If I listed him as a safety, Brian Branch would be the safety one. But Jartavius Martin, there's a ton to like here. And again, I just think he's super underrated in this class.
Yeah, so I might as well just, Jartavius Martin is my number 2 because I have Brian Branch at number 1. I've talked about Brian Branch a ton at this point. Like I'm all in. Branch has the first round grade for me. Martin does have a second round grade for me, but I do believe, depending on how you feel about Antonio Johnson, because I do love a lot of what he can do.
Yeah,
I do feel like Martin is a slightly different tier, but there is a lot of projection because if you watch his film, there's 611 yards given up in coverage, and so if you just watch that and you think that's what you're gonna get, then you're not going to grade him very favorably. And I think that did take some adjustment because there are moments where you're like, okay, that's a lot. Like you're getting kind of picked on in some instances, but that's not the point. I think you take Martin. Now, I do consider that, of course, but I'm not playing him in the slot as much as he was asked to do. I'm going to change 100%. Up his role. Like the role will be changed. And so you look at what he can do to fulfill a more safety role rather than be a slot corner, which he did a lot, which is a good trait to have. So if you take those assets and those traits and what he does on film and project them at safety, that's why he's number 2 for me. I think there are players, I'm sure there are other corners that you've watched who are better in coverage, of course. And maybe there are some guys on this list who are better in coverage. But Martin, to me, like in terms of slot coverage, but Martin, what he does as a safety, how he brings it in the run game, the unique physical traits that he has. Thank God he has a low missed tackle rate. Like he should have been my number 1 off of that alone, practically, because that was at least refreshing compared to his teammate. I do have some wonderings and worries, I guess, about how much further he has to go. I believe this was his like 4th or 5th year at Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, he was a 5th year player.
Yeah. So how much more can you get out of him at this point? With that said, everything, like he hasn't played his role yet. Like his NFL role has yet to be played yet. What he did at Illinois, a lot to like, but that role hasn't been played just yet. And he has that athletic ceiling to continue to grow, in my opinion. So hopefully, he hasn't, ceilinged out, if you will. I do think there's more to go. He is safety 2. I'll talk about Antonio Johnson then, who's my number 3, who if Brian Branch is a slot corner would have been number 2. Someone in the chat said it's difficult to nitpick Antonio Johnson. I think it is because I think some of his misses are the worst. Some of the misses that he has are really, really rough. And he does try to hit hard, though. If you watch YouTube highlights, Antonio, like if you're a YouTube highlight watcher, that's how you watch these guys.
He's got a great highlight tape.
Antonio Johnson is going to be your number 1 safety practically, unless it's Brian Branch, honestly, because the highlight tape is amazing. And he does try to hit really hard. And when he connects, it's a highlight play, but sometimes he'll just whiff as bad as you could possibly whiff. And I don't think he's particularly strong in his arms. So when he doesn't wrap up, or if he even tries to, guys can break out of it. So it is very, very frustrating sometimes. The Alabama game, if you want to watch that Alabama game, that was one of the worst games I've seen. That was a bad one. It made me bump Jahmyr Gibbs' grade up because of how well he did in that game. Yeah. But what if you can get this player to do the things that he does really, really well, which is be a playmaker at minimum at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah.
There's nobody that's trying to kill the opposing player more than him, I think. This guy is trying to make plays, rushing the passer, against screens, swings out of the backfield, whatever. He's trying to make those plays and he's trying to make them as close to the line of scrimmage, if not behind it. So other than maybe like Martin, I think nobody hits harder. And I would argue that Johnson does hit the hardest. So for me, he's a bit like Nick Cross last year, where he went to the Colts in the 3rd round in like the 90s or something, because the quality plays are so good. But the concerning plays were like very concerning. You know, if you watch I watched the Alabama game, that was concerning. Then I watched the Colorado game, and you've got multiple pass breakups, pressure, several tackles for loss. And if you're telling me like in this group, you know, who do I want to take and take it the most of a chance on? Let's say in round 3, like for the Chargers, I'm not looking at round 2 safeties, but if someone's in there in round 3, and who am I going to take a chance on to be the best of the group because I want to develop this player? I think it's him. Like there's a lot of work to do. But I think there's so much good there that he is worth being safety 2 for you and safety 3 for me.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, you know, there's a lot of validity with watching like tape and then looking at the numbers and like seeing what exactly lines up. And so, you know, I started watching Antonio Johnson. I watched one of the 2021 games. I want to say it was against Arkansas. And I felt like the dude was just like always around the football, like just was playing like hair on fire. And then I watched, again, you watched the Colorado game. I watched the Colorado game. Even his Alabama game, there were some poor angles, but there were some really nice run stops in there too. And then you go and look at the composite rankings, and he has the highest run stop percentage of any safety in this class. Like that checks out on tape, checks out with the composite rankings. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you are not getting this like elite coverage player, right? I think he was like 15th or 16th in forcing completion rate. That's not who he is, right? Like he's a big physical safety. You want him around the box. And I think if that's the role that you are taking him in, then, you know, you'll be able to get a quality football player there. And so he kind of reminded me of Jaleel Adai. And I know that Chargers... I'm saying strong safety Jaleel Adai because I still believe that strong safety Jaleel Adai was at least a decent,
he was a good player,
average player, you know, at strong safety. Why they moved him to free safety will never ever make sense to me. But strong safety Jaleel Adai was a good football player, and I think I see some similar qualities there in Antonio Johnson. So I loved the way that he defended the run. I liked his production as well in terms of pressures and disrupting the quarterback as a blitzer. So I think you're getting a player who's going to be really pigeonholed into a really specific role. But if he can excel at that role, then you're getting good value here. So this is the whole safety group, right? Like there's not a ton of versatility here. Players that can play all 3 spots, rush the passer, play linebacker, play deep, stuff like that. I think Jartavius Martin is one of those players. I think Brian Branch is one of those players. But other than that, like you're taking these players and probably fitting them into one specific role. Similar to how like the Chargers have done with Alohi Gilman. And I think if you can find the role that makes sense for these players, then you can get some good value for them. You know, I think Antonio Johnson, again, are you going to make me take him in round 2? No, but if you are in a trade back situation, the Chargers get 2 third round picks, then yeah, I think this is a situation you could talk me into. So
yeah,
I would love his fit on the Chargers. Like I talked about on earlier in the show, I think they do need some physicality. I think they need some run stuffing ability. And Antonio Johnson would check both of those boxes, but I'm not crazy about like his draft range right now for the Chargers.
Yeah, and it's always tough when I'm trying to do a mock draft. Again, if you trade back, you trade things around, move things around, I think it works out. But every time I've tried to do, after I watch this group, I try to do a mock draft to see where they go. And it's always like everyone's 10 picks before the Chargers pick. Like whatever I want in that range, like I'd have to take Chris Smith probably in round 2. Would I do that? No. You know, if I want Antonio Johnson, probably going to take him in round 2. Do I want to do that? Not really. So, but Jartavius Martin, that's why he's so, I think, interesting, because I'm really curious. And I should have looked at where Dane Brugler had him ranked, because I know he's not very high on Sidney Brown, or in terms of like rankings, he's further down. But yeah, I think the way that the mock consensus board is shaped out is very different than how I feel about some of these guys. So I'd be interested to see where they end up going. Someone said, you know, Dan says, I wouldn't be surprised if Sidney Brown is drafted higher than most of these players. Yeah, I get that. Honestly, you know, we weren't huge fans, mostly because of the 70 missed tackles and the fact that he's my height. So I don't love that projection, but there's not a lot of athletes on this list, and he's certainly one of them. He's in the top 3 athletes at safety, and also one of the better safeties. There are athletes at safety, but I found most of them were in like the 250 consensus board rankings, so I didn't quite get to them. Do you happen to see where Dane has the safety?
Yeah.
Group?
Also, apparently, Jartavius I goes by Quan. So.
I forgot about that. Is that kind of being Asian? I don't know.
But yeah, if you look at where he has these players, Brian Branch, he has a first round grade, and then Antonio Johnson, he has 2nd/3rd, and then everybody else is 3rd and below. So this is not necessarily a great safety class. Like I said, I think in the linebacker position, it's harder to project all those guys because it's a lot of like former safeties, a lot of like overhang defenders. You know what you're going to get in some of these players, and maybe that's not your thing. I don't know. He has Marte Mop, who has a safety. I have not watched Sacramento State tape, so I can't comment there. But to answer your original question, he has Sidney Brown at 10th with a 4th round grade.
Really? Okay, I thought he was actually that was better than that. So 10th, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I didn't know that. Ooh, good question from Chris. Where would Alohi Gilman be on your lists? Are we talking NFL? Because Alohi Gilman in college, I didn't watch.
I didn't watch him either.
Because I don't think anybody did but the Chargers. So,
Oh, man, he has Ronnie Hickman at 18th.
Yeah, Dane. Well, I didn't dislike him that much. Jeez.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ronnie Hickman is 2nd in forced completion rate. He's 2nd in snaps per reception. Like, there's a lot to like there, but I get it. He's not an elite athlete. He didn't test, so I think that's probably not a great sign. But
I mean, I didn't love the tackling whole thing, but I think against Penn State, he showcased a variety of good things. So I definitely didn't have him as 18th. I can't imagine I'd find 8 more safeties I'd like more than him.
Yeah. To get back to Alohi Gilman, though, I remember going back and watching him after the Chargers drafted him, and I feel like he's a similar archetype as Brandon Joseph. So Notre Dame definitely has a type.
That's actually a good call.
So I think in this class, I probably would have him, maybe in like after Sidney Brownish, but I think Alohi Gilman has definitely exceeded expectations for where he was drafted. I think he was a bit of a consensus board reach, if I'm not mistaken. But again, it was a 6th round pick. They initially drafted him as an Adrian Phillips replacement, which is not good.
Well,
but again, Alohi played great this year. I think he's earned the right to, play some significant snaps for them next year as well. So, I think his college profile would definitely lean itself more towards maybe number 10, 11, 12-ish in this class.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good call with Brandon Joseph. I think that is, not because they both played for Notre Dame, but I actually think that's a very good comparison. I don't know how they stack up physically, but I know Gilman wasn't exactly a tester, if I'm not mistaken, nor has he ever been, which is fine.
Yeah. Like I said, Joseph has he has 84th percentile 10-yard split. So that's at least a good thing there. But I don't think Alohi Gilman had that kind of testing, but I can look right now.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Chris, you can clarify. Where would Gilman be in terms of NFL Gilman versus these guys on the list, which I know kind of sucks, but like, where would you? Because I do think he's been better, like over the years, especially this particular year. So, like, I guess in terms of who would you be okay with taking and saying, okay, I do believe this player is a replacement over Alohi Gilman. Granted, some guys are box safeties, so it's kind of hard to tell.
So Alohi Gilman coming out ran a 4.6, which was 52nd percentile. His 10 and 20-yard splits were well below average. He actually had an elite shuttle time at 4.08, which is 90th percentile. 3 cone of 6.81, which is 87th percentile. But yeah, overall his ARIA score is 3.81. So not a great athlete, but short agility was a very good tester, which I think backs up. I think Alohi Gilman in short areas is really solid. Yeah, Brandon Joseph did play at Northwestern as well. So
yeah, I didn't watch enough of Northwestern to tell if he played better. I watched one game from there, just kind of get like some feeling of where he was. I thought he had a good game, the game that I watched, but I don't know if he played better overall.
Yeah. So we didn't obviously talk a ton about Brian Branch today. I feel like we've talked about him a ton on other episodes. So you have him as a safety. What kind of made the difference there for you with Branch as a safety versus corner?
Yeah, it came down to how I feel. I mean, it seems weird, but I think corners cover, right? And so I think that Branch does two things better than his coverage. I like him a lot in coverage, but I feel like I like the safety traits a bit more in
Okay.
terms of playing the run, rushing the passer. And so because I do feel like both of those things are better for him, I feel like I can describe him better as a safety more than a corner. Because when it comes to coverage, I do think that's his, quote unquote weakest asset. But even then, I really, really like what he does in that regard. I just feel like he does more of the safety things a bit more. But I rank him as a safety, knowing full well that I'm happy playing him in the slot as a corner just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that his best attribute is as a slot, but that's just my opinion. I think he did so much of everything in Alabama that you can be comfortable playing him wherever. And like, listen, man, like I think for the Chargers, he solves a huge need for them. You can start him at safety, you can play him in the slot. Like I think that would be a great pick, especially if they could get him through a trade down. But um, love Brian Branch's tape. I think there's a ton of things to like there. I know he's not an elite athlete, but I don't really care.
No, and it's not like you have alternative options here in the first round where it's like, well, this guy's an athlete, therefore I'll take him. No, it's like there isn't anybody projected to go this high. That's that good. And yeah, sure, he's not an elite athlete. I don't care. Like it didn't bug me. It didn't seem to hinder him. Would you like him to be a 10, scoring RAS guy? Sure. But I just didn't, it didn't bug me. I think if he were, you know, a better athlete, we wouldn't be talking about him being available at 21, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question here from Aaron Woolley, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. He says, do you weight players by position when grading? For example, is it harder to get a round one grade as a linebacker or safety? I know for me, like when it comes to the big board, like when I create my big board, I definitely weigh position value there. Like, Bijan Robinson, for example, he's my highest graded player, but because he is a running back, like you just kind of have to knock him down a couple of spots. And I think you can, have some other analysts as well. So, for example, like my number one player in this class is a corner. My number two player in this class is
Oh,
an
I
edge
didn't know
rusher.
that.
Yeah, man, I can't
Don't
wait
tell
to
me.
talk
Don't tell
about
me.
him.
Okay.
So yeah, I have a corner and an edge rusher ahead of Bijan as on my big board because those are premium positions. But I think you can stick the grade on him whatever you want him to be, right? Like
Yeah.
Bijan right now has a 7.7 grade for me, which is one of the highest I've ever given. But because he plays running back, I'm going to give the edge to some of those other players.
Yeah, same thing. I grade as I grade. I mean, obviously they have different attributes that I'm grading, but I grade them for whatever the score is, and then I rank them, relative to their score. But some guys are a bit higher, like Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame has a third round grade for me. He's ahead of some players that have a second round grade because Foskey plays edge rusher, and that's better than running back. Not better, but more valuable than running back or tight end. So, when you look at our big boards later on, if you watch that episode, which I love, I don't know if anybody else does, but I think we like doing that one. Some of these guys, like last year, I loved Rashad White, and I had him tied for a grade with Brees Hall, but I had them as the 50 and 51st players in the draft because I try to prioritize edge receiver. And that was a big receiver class.
Yeah.
So some guys, like I don't grade them higher than some of these guys. But yeah, linebacker tends to get low on the priority. Running back does. And then maybe like safety D tackle. But even then D tackle, I think, is extremely important, especially if you're versatile. So yeah, linebacker tends to get bumped down the lowest with running back for me.
Yeah. So like I think the big board is where you weigh the positional value, not necessarily the grades here. So yeah, man, can't wait to talk about the big boards in general. I think there's been some shuffling too. So like we can talk about this on a different episode, but like we did receivers back. That was one of our first episodes, and my receiver rankings have changed like quite a bit recently. So
interesting.
I'm excited to get into the big board and figure out what has changed recently.
I don't want to look at your grades. Well, I guess maybe your big board's different. I'm so interested. I know who you said was moved up a bit, but I don't know. Who else has moved?
Yeah. So we'll get into that again. We're like 2.5 weeks away from draft night, so we're really pushing it, pedal to the metal now. We got a ton of great stuff coming down the line here in terms of draft coverage. So Tyler actually had this idea for Thursday's show. We're going to be talking about specific players who are going to meet specific requirements that the Chargers have in terms of physical profiles. So Arjun tweeted out a little bit of a sampler size there in terms of the wide receivers. We're going to dive into that, plus like Kellen Moore's players. We're going to do edge rushers as well, like all over from Brandon Staley's time, as a coach in the league. So going to be a lot of fun on Thursday, diving into which players check the most boxes from a physicality standpoint. And then, yeah, man, we're full steam ahead towards the draft.
Wait. Okay, no, hold on. It just clicked for me. Bijan's a 7.7?
Yes.
You have a corner graded higher than that?
Oh, because he's on the big board, not like with a higher grade.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, what are we at? Like 8? How good is this corner? But okay. All right.
So I have Bijan at a 7.7 grade, and then my corner, who's the best, who has my number 1 ranking in the big board, is a 7.55.
Okay. Because like I've never seen you love someone more than Penei Sewell, and I was curious if that's where we were getting with this player.
I really, really like him though. Like I think he's a blue chip player for me in this class. So, I mentioned the 0 to 8 scale. So anybody who's 7.5 and up is a blue chip player, meaning like this is somebody we think is going to be like a perennial Pro Bowl type player. Will Anderson is 1, Bijan Robinson is the 2nd, and then this corner we'll get to next week is the 3rd.
Wow. Yeah, Will Anderson actually fell to edge 7 for me.
I can understand why you would have Tyree Wilson ahead of Will Anderson.
Even I can't, honestly.
I can't, but I do not agree with that take. But I can understand like why somebody would like Tyree Wilson. Like somebody like Will McDonald more than Will Anderson, man, I cannot understand for the life of me. And then also like these other players, that was the most clickbaity thing I have ever seen in my life.
He's like, I just don't get it. I turn on the film, I don't get it. I'm like, he's got like 70 pressures last year. Like he did something to be considered, edge 3. Like, I'm sorry, but Lucas Van Ness ain't that good,
Dude, Aiden Hutchinson was a Heisman finalist last year, and Will Anderson had like 35 more pressures than him.
I just don't see it. I don't see what it is.
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense.
It has to make a little bit of sense. Whatever.
Oh man, it was funny. Our last episode, people were like, "Oh, Chris Sims says this." It's like I don't give a shit.
And thank you for backing that up today, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man, Tyler, any final thoughts on the safeties before we head out?
Nope, it's a solid group. I think they're a very solid group. A lot of 3rd round grades in this group for me. Not a lot of guys I love in the 1st round, but I can't wait to watch corners because it sounds like there's a lot of really good players in this class. I haven't looked at them yet, so I can't wait.
Yeah, man, the corner class is so much fun. Like, I really like Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. is my 5th graded corner right now, and he has a 1st round grade. It's crazy.
Wow.
So this corner class is stacked, man. And like, I had heard a bunch of people say like, oh, like the corner group is my favorite group. And I'm like, really? Like, I feel like corner is not really like, it hasn't been that kind of stacked in a long time. Like, generally speaking, you have like, the year that there was Surtain and Horn, like that was a great corner class. And, generally speaking, you have like one top tier guy and then some other ones. So, yeah, I can't wait to get into the corners. Yeah. So, Chris Sims, Will Anderson is edge 5. Can't believe it. All right. So that's going to do it for us today. Like I said, we're going to have a great episode planned for you guys on Thursday. And then we'll get, like I said, full steam ahead towards the draft. So that's going to do it for us tonight. We'll see you guys later.